So, guys, I do want to talk about AEW and the show last night. And I do have to be honest with you, it was a very bad show for a couple of reasons. And most importantly, is because it was so, like, bad. It was so boring that I actually fell asleep through the majority of the show. And I do have to admit, like, a couple of things. That number one, that I do have a busy, like, schedule. Like, I do have a very, very busy life, as people know. Like, I work a lot of overtime and I have a lot of responsibilities around the house. I had to buy a lot of linens on Tuesday, and I spent like 8 hours like washing and drying because I live in an apartment complex where you only get one washer and one dryer because everybody else is using the other one. So I did fall asleep for two reasons. I just felt the show wasn't that engaging, and I also felt that it's a little bit about my lifestyle, and I do want to be honest with that because I do think that I just have to be truthful. But the reason why it wasn't engaging is because like a lot of the matches were repetitive. You had a bunch of triple team matches, and the other issue too is that when you have a triple team match and you have like somebody like Will Ospreay, it's not good for him because we expect like Will Ospreay have these tour de force matches. You can't really have a wrestler that has these really long epic matches in a trios match because that doesn't feel realistic. I also felt that the priority of the show was not adding more matches to the card. I think that the only just they didn't. I don't think they even like came up with a new match last night except for a tag team title match. So I do want to talk about like the things that I liked about the show. I liked MJF versus Daniel Garcia. Dan Garcia was really hitting on MJF, like really just saying things like like you don't have a relationship that lasts more than a year. Insulting a spray tan and other things like that, and just saying like you're fake and all that. So I really like those things. I like the thing about the relationship because I know like that's the thing that hurts MJF the most is because he's somebody who's not really respected by others, but he doesn't really connect the dots that people that he's like it's because he's an asshole. But also the other thing too is that he's just telling Daniel Garcia that thing about life, is that sometimes when you are a wrestler and when you do a lot for other people, you will go down a path of people eventually liking you and then not liking you. And then and then you gotta deal with all those feelings and stuff like that, really. Like eventually you're gonna become the bad guy. Eventually you're gonna have to, become the devil, really, So I like what MJF is saying, but also even to like the ending where Daniel Garcia kind of chases MJF and MJF hits him with the glass um, with glass, with a glass cup, with a glass champagne bottle, with a glass champagne cup. I did feel that was a little bad for Garcia because I felt like it made him look kind of stupid because he already knows the threat's there really, but still I do think they're gonna have a great match. And I have no problem with Daniel Garcia losing. I think that's what's going to happen unless you do something like you create a match series out of it. But I really, really hope that within the next 2 to 3 months, really, I think that from now all the way maybe until like a full year, you have to really set up a good Daniel Garcia and MGF feud and have them have a blow off in a really crazy match and have that be the next, Swerve and Hangman. Because again, you got to end the Swerve and Hangman stuff. It's been going on for too long. The next thing that I will say that I liked is you had a match between Mariah May and Nyla Rose, and it was kind of bad because it felt like the majority of the match, it felt like Mariah May was out leveled, was outclassed by Nyla Rose really, and it kind of goes down to what people say about people like Nyla Rose, like she's this big beefy woman, and nobody can really beat her unless she actually the only way that she won was that she was on the steps, she got arrogant, Mariah May knocked her down. She had a bit of an injury, and then Mariah May just hit a finisher on her. So it's not good because it says okay, if Awesome Kong or another big woman was on your roster, how do you really respect those women? Because it seems like they're like near invincible. It's not believable for them to be beaten so easily. I think you kind of should have had a squash match or something like that, really. But I do think that, Nyla Rose, she should be taking herself to NXT because she's a little lost on the AEW roster. And she's kind of almost like, in a bit of a jobber role. You did something, where, it was like Okada versus Kyle Fletcher. And then you're setting up Okada versus Takeshita, and I'd love to see that because I think like Takeshita to me, he resonates with me because he's one of those wrestlers that he doesn't really have a direction, but he has a lot of potential. He's talking about how he feels a little lost in the roster, so I kind of can resonate with a person like that. He wants to be bigger and better, really, and I think definitely during the fatal 4-way match that they're having, you really had to set up Okada versus Takeshita and actually have them have a blow off match and have a real feud with a real wrestler, really, because I think Okada's lacking that. So that could be something. And then also Don Cal's family, they should really transition into going after titles, even if it means going after the Young Bucks or other people that are villains as well, really, because you have to kind of set up them as wrestlers that want these things, and that's important because if you don't, it's almost like they can't just be there to be there. You look at the Undisputed Kingdom with how they've been the ROH tag team for a long time, but you kind of can't have them just be in this role of just going around and just being existing. They have to actually accomplish things. So I'm happy that with Takeshita, you can kind of reset that with the Don Callis family. Like him and versus Okada would be a good feud. The last thing that happened, and I know like this is kind of like the thing that people want to hear and talk about is Swerve Strickland versus Adam Page. The first thing that I'm going to say is that, and I know I'm going to talk about this in another video, is that I'm mad that they're having a unsanctioned match because what Tony Khan said, lights out or unsanctioned means win and lose doesn't matter, and that's kind of part of my language, but beyond retarded, because it may set up for Adam Page to win, by saying, okay, well, this match doesn't matter. I think what they should say is that a lights out match means we're not even going to have a referee. It's like who walks out of that ring with no, who's going to be who's like, it's like a last man standing match, but whoever walks out of that ring and is alive at the very end, like we're going to like have both of them kind of take it as far as they want to, really. The thing about it is nobody leaves the cage and it's actually going to be one-on-one, really, so no interference, no nothing. He could have set it up like that, but just saying, okay, a win and a loss doesn't matter in this, that's really, really stupid. Because, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, that, then it's almost like whoever wins, it doesn't really matter. But I really would think that, the whole thing about Swerve buying his childhood home, and they made it very sentimental, I did feel that was really like a great juxtaposition, and that actually swerved me a little bit because I know like some people said it's a little predictable, but with AEW they really don't do these things. And you see a lot of times with AEW they always have like these things on their show where they try to advertise feel good moments, and you don't see a feel good moment turn into a tragic moment. So I really, really think that what they accomplished is transcendent for AEW, and it shows like what I've said deep about AEW. They have to understand matches do not matter. None of it matters unless you have a great story. And this actually says, now you have a great story. Now you have something that's emotional, because you can hate Adam Page for just always being like this, relentless, begrudging asshole. Or you can say, okay, well, remember that Adam Page, this all started when Swerve went into his home and went into his home when he wasn't there and vandalized the house, really. And then also, I think what they were saying, that I think that Adam Page's his children were home at the time, really. Like maybe they were watching each other or whatever, really. So that's a little too far, really. That he threatened the lives of his children. So there's stuff that you can kind of really do with this, but the whole thing about what Adam Page did, it takes it to another level, and that's what they need to do. Because just remember, this is 2 weeks after All In, so you need a hooker to sell the show. No pun intended. But that's kind of what sells shows. You have wrestlers do things to make it a really, really big deal. You look at what happened with WrestleMania. That the whole reason, that the whole final boss thing was to sell WrestleMania, so the intention was on WrestleMania and not really the Vince McMahon sex scandal. With this is just saying, okay, we just had a show 2 weeks ago, our WrestleMania type of show, and now we need to sell this pay-per-view. We need to have, we want people to come to the Now Arena. We want people to kind of wonder what we're going to do with this. We want to make sure we get our usual over 100,000 people buying the show, really. So I really think that, mission accomplished with this. So I'm very, very happy. Um, and I know I shouldn't be saying this on camera, but I know somebody who has to work this weekend, and this person really wants to go to the show. They want to keep a streak alive going to all the AEW shows. They actually have a streak since last year of going to all the US AEW shows. So this person is planning on, just being there by any means necessary, even though they have to work, and, there's things that you can do to get out of work, So yeah, that person's actually going to go, and I do have plans of watching the whole pay-per-view this weekend, no matter what, really. And and definitely, I think that, as I said, that this I'm proud of AEW for this. You need to create big moments, and I know that some people may say, it's a little stupid because Adam Page was actually at a different home or whatever. Like, fuck the physics of this. And then the other thing too is that there's some people that may say it's a ripoff of Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt and other things like that. I would say no, fuck it, because in wrestling it doesn't always have to be accurate. And then the other thing I would say is that that WWE is a ripoff of the Jerry Springer show. WWE and Bray Wyatt, it was a ripoff of that. I think they had there was this British show with a sadistic Mr. Rogers, and then you also look at Bray Wyatt. He's a ripoff of Waylon Mercy, and a lot of there were some horror films where they lit houses on fire in the 70s or stuff like that, really. So everything's inspired by everything, and that, and even you look at WWE, it was a ripoff of ECW. The Attitude Era was a ripoff of ECW. So the point of it is that if you look at this and say, oh well, it's Bray Wyatt, it's a Bray Wyatt ripoff or whatever, it's, I have no problem with this. The big mission that was accomplished was AEW told a story with this. They actually had a penultimate chapter, and that's what they need to do, because they have to understand matches do not matter unless you have a great story behind it. And this was a great story because you did something that was shocking, you did something that was controversial, you did something where you made Adam Page actually look like an obsessed psychopath / sociopath. So all this really adds to the character that Adam Page is, obsessed with Swerve, and he's going to do anything by any means necessary. And if you want to start it, the metaphor of Swerve's house, the slogan, now this is literally Swerve's house, so that's kind of ironic. But also, too, Swerve invaded his home to get at Adam Page, and now Adam Page did the ultimate thing, really. And I think that, as I said, if you want Swerve to be violent and ruthless and go to that next level like he did with Keith Lee by breaking a cinder block on his body, if you want Swerve to go to a level of violence or a level of taking it way too far, really, you need to have something that's going to be red for the bull, type of thing, really. That's going to be the red flag for the bull. And this is what they need to do. This is what they need to take it this far and take this risk, really. And as I said, that this is the way to do it. And I'm very proud of them for that. I will say that I'm not happy that they're having a Continental Fatal 4-Way match. The problem is that, unless you're leaning to Takeshita versus Okada one-on-one, that has to come out of it. But the other issue with it is that it kind of sets up a situation where you have 8 matches. Usually they have 12 or 13 or 14 matches for pay-per-views. What are you going to do with the pre-match hour? So I really want to see them set up other matches. Like I've said before, and I'll say it again, in my fantasy booking, you give Hologram a match. In my fantasy booking, you give Layla Hirsch or another woman on the ROH roster a match. You should have Jamie Hayter versus Saraya. You should have announced that. You really were focusing on... You're really going to focus Collision on the Continental title, on a title that really doesn't mean anything. And then you're also... On the show, yes, you're setting up a tag team match, and I'm proud of that because you can't have FTR versus the Acclaimed versus Young Bucks. They have to have something different, so I'm happy with that. But they could have easily set up Grizzled Young Veterans and FTR. They could have set that up as well, and then the Acclaimed could have said, well, we're going to challenge a random tag team because in Chicago, everybody lets you play. Then you have Private Party or Top Flight, like another team that could be rising in the ranks or something like that. Or even with the Don Callis family, you could have had, two people randomly, or you could have Takeshita do double duty with Kyle Fletcher, type of thing, really. They could have set up more stuff. But I do understand, the other thing too is that sometimes because you want the Swerve and Hangman thing to stand out and be your big money match, sometimes you have to make a sacrifice, and that's good because you need some things to stand out. Really, if you kind of advertise your big money match on a show and you advertise 6 or 7 matches, that may not feel as special, really. So I think that Collision, if they want to add more matches to the show, please do that. Please, 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 please do that, and definitely kind of emphasize to the crowd on Collision and the audience what an unsanctioned match is. Just so we know it's more than just this match doesn't count as a win and loss, because that's really stupid. That doesn't do anything. Say it's going to be no referees. Whoever walks out of it standing, if it's one person walking out or both people or no people, we're going to make a decision. It's very similar to a last man standing match without a referee, because get all that. You take as far as you want to type of thing, So I think that's what they have to do with this, So overall, I would have to say it's a bad show because it made me fall asleep, really. But it had a lot of redeeming qualities, So I'll go as far as a C minus because I really, really think the whole thing they did with Swerve was awesome, and they have to make a new star in Daniel Garcia just because they have to. You always need to make new stars in your wrestling company, So that's what I have to say about the show. So that's really awesome stuff.